Hello and good afternoon, my industry friends and colleagues. Thanks to your prodding, thanks to your insistence, thanks to your overwhelming feedback and support, I'm here today in front of you with the next edition of the leadership series which we had initiated last year. Hope the year 2018 has kicked off very well for each one of you, both on personal front and professional front. Moving on to the topic. Friends, on the subject of business leadership, I recently came across a large survey, as big as involving 195 top business leaders across 30 diverse organizations from different industries and fields, hailing from 10 different countries. In this survey, there is a well-known mentor and coach, American mentor and coach. She asked questions from these 195 leaders. What do you think are the top leadership competencies and traits which have made you what you are today? There were 74 list of traits and competencies which she had surveyed earlier were given to the respondents, and the simple question was put forward to them. Can you imagine what was the response and what came on the top of the leadership competencies? As high as 67% of these 195 top leaders mentioned that the competency of high ethical moral standards as the topmost competency which the leader must have. And the second biggest was his ability to communicate this very clearly and effectively to his constituencies was the second most which came out so strongly. When we look at on the ground in the pharmaceutical industry, we say this is hyper-competitive, fierce competition. There are various estimates. People say 6,000, 10,000 players in the market. We talk about there are a number of brands available for the same molecule. There is cutthroat competition. We come across the paradoxes of all the kinds at the marketplace when we talk about business. Friends, in this quagmire, in this situation, what we heard from Sunny Guys, the researcher, whose study actually got published in HBR, Harvard Business Review, is that possible, applicable in our own market, in our own industry called Indian pharmaceutical market or Indian pharmaceutical industry. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege, pleasure, pride, I don't know what more to add, to have my esteemed guest for today, Annaswamy Vaidheesh. I'm sure all of us know. We have heard about him. He is the Vice President, South Asia, GSK, and Managing Director of GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceuticals, India. Let me give you a little background. I recently invited him to NMIMS to address the students, which he loves doing, and address the students under the aegis of CEO Forum. He chose to speak on a subject called ethics and ethical standards. Friends, this was a discourse lasted for over 1.5 hours at the fag end of the day. All the students in the audience liked it. I simply loved it. And somewhere at the back of my mind, I took a decision that I have to persuade Vaidheesh to talk about it in the larger audiences in the pharmaceutical industry. So, friends, that's the genesis, that's the idea behind this particular talk. Though Vaidheesh needs no introduction, but still a brief one to recap. A graduate in physics from Madras University and Masters in Marketing Management from Mumbai University, Vaidheesh has a very rich, diverse, and very enviable track record. As rich and diverse, I say because he has the experience of handling consumer products, the FMCG brands of Johnson & Johnson for over 5 years as its marketing director and franchise director. Correct me if I'm wrong, Vaidheesh. Medical devices products he also dealt with as executive vice president for over 6 years, and prescription products, particularly the diabetes franchise, also for over 5 years in the same company as managing director and VP Asia Pacific. He also gained a very unique experience of handling the government affairs for over 3 long years on behalf of all the business of Johnson & Johnson. Before he became, and I think GSK was lucky to have picked him up as the managing director of India operations, as well as the VP of South Asia. I say so, Vaidheesh, because I've also been in GSK. I started my career at GSK for 15 long years, and therefore I felt very proud and happy to see your background and you heading GSK operations. Friends, no wonder OPPI picked him up as his next president in the recent AGM, which I had the privilege to see myself. So I will keep talking about the person sitting next to me, but idea today is to hear from him and hear from him things which I saw close to his heart. I saw the passion with which he talked when we had the opportunity to listen to him. So, amongst all your impressive achievements, Vaidheesh, what impressed me most was your solid faith in ethics. I saw your talk about it so passionately, and therefore I thought I must give you a freewheeling opportunity to give your mind out to people who are listening to you in Facebook Live, and your notion of ethics, your notions of ethical standards, your notion of ethical dilemmas, which you presented with so much of ease when we heard it last time. So, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'm delighted to be in front of a larger audience. I'm quite sure that what you mentioned, though I might have said I presented to the audience, it's not something new. See, it's not something I'm the seer of ethics or somebody who's going to give a big lecture on what is ethics. Fundamentally, people don't get it. Ethics is something which all of us grow up with. That's what bothers the hell out of me, is every religion, wherever you go, your school, college, everybody talks about code of conduct, ethics. So it's very clear the issue is not about ethics in society. I think there is a great awareness. Everybody knows what is right and wrong. Everybody knows that you are not supposed to steal from one another. Everybody knows that you are not supposed to kill.
That's exactly the irony.
Yeah. So, question. Frankly, in my opinion, I always believe that issue is not about ethics. Issue is about the ethical dilemmas. The 95% of the time, I think people don't have an issue in executing what is ethics. I think it is the 5% of the time is where people are, I'm talking about in general, okay? There are some people, don't worry about ethics. I'm not talking about such kind of people.
Yeah, vast majority of people.
Vast majority of the people who've been brought up, studied in a school, studied in a college, or even in a village where the grandparents have, through the folklore, talk about what is Ramayana and Mahabharata. It's all shown in a story form, or whether it's a Christian, whether it's a Muslim, everybody has
Even the schools,
even in the
textbooks,
school,
everywhere.
textbooks. In fact, I studied in 1 year in Islamic university, and there is also 1 hour on a Friday or one of these days. We used to have 1 hour session on code of conduct. And so the question which we all forget is the ethical dilemma. So that's what I spent time that day, is to how do we resolve the ethical dilemmas. And even if you look at, I keep giving an example of Mahabharata, the whole Bhagavad Gita of Krishna, the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna is all about resolving ethical dilemmas.
Well said, well said.
So it's not that Arjuna did not know what to do, but that's where Krishna, he gives him a sense of method of how do you resolve the ethical conflict, right? So what I will try to explain probably in a couple of minutes is it's not difficult to resolve it. What is dilemmas first and foremost? Dilemma is one where you find both the directions look equally good, and that is the reason why you have the problem.
That's the real dilemma.
That is the dilemma.
That's the real
Otherwise, there is no
dilemma.
dilemma. If you have to turn right, you know very well that you have to turn right. I know very well that turning right is the right way to go. But you find both the direction leading to some outcome which you are happy with, or you are okay with. As an example, if you are in pharma industry, people say, having a price increase is a good idea, right? Now, because you can make more profits, but you will be able to give access to more patients. That is also a good idea, right? Giving an access to more patients, at the same time bringing more profitability to the company, both are good decisions to take. Now, how do I resolve this dilemma, right? And similarly, there are tougher situations that comes in where I gave an example of product recalls. When many times when people have to take a decision on product recalls, there are some standard guidelines are available at a time where you have to use your managerial judgment, and that's a time where you have to recall worth 100 crores, where your profitability of the company goes for a toss, and there are investors waiting for you to grow the business, make more profit. At the same time, you got to take a recall. Now the question is, both are compelling conversation that you need to have. What decision I'm going to take? Now I can give more and more examples of where you come across an ethical dilemma, where both directions. So the best way to resolve ethical dilemma is to have what I call it the lighthouse. So every company should have a lighthouse. Every family has a lighthouse. Every country has a lighthouse. What we call it the lighthouse is nothing but the values which is articulated by that organization. The values are articulated by the family, right? So that comes in handy, whether can I use that lens to resolve the dilemma that I'm in, right?
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So I can give an example of how, say, Johnson & Johnson, back in 1980s, where they have to recall Tylenol because some miscreants added poison to the tablets, and where the company took the responsibility of recalling those and destroying and incurring $50 million write-off on their books. Now the question here is that how did they make that decision? And that's where they use their values, which is called as credo. Credo value, which is basically followed by everyone in the company, is what they call it the responsibilities to the stakeholders, responsibility to the consumers, or the doctors, patients, and mothers and fathers who use the products. Second responsibility is to the employees. Third responsibility is to the society, and fourth responsibility is to the stockholders. Now they said our first responsibility is to our consumers and the patients and doctors who use our products. So they took that as a basis of decision making, irrespective of whether the poisoning is not their problem. It is a problem of social miscreants, where the local government has to take accountability. Whereas they said that if somebody is trusting my product to cure their illness, we don't want to have one death happening in the country. So they took accountability and they marshaled their resources and made sure these entire tablets was brought into one center where they could destroy. And then they came up with a non-tamperable, what they call it as a gel cap, or you can't open it and put cyanide.
Okay.
So that, in my opinion, is the way that they resolved. The one way to do it is saying that it's not my accountability, it is the government job to catch them and let the police do the job of catch them and put behind bars. And in that process, there are some people who are going to die because they were asking for a ransom. The person who called up the office and said, I need $6 million or $10 million. Now the question is, they could have paid $10 million and solved the problem. They would have told the police and said, it is your job to find a problem, find a solution. The other one is that, let me use my lens of my values of the company. People trust me, so I need to reciprocate the trust. What I'm going to do is so this is how, what I call it as, how do you resolve dilemmas?
Just one more point, as you were talking about the values at the organizational level, and that's what you take decisions. Recently, how do we find out our own values? That's organizational value. How do we find out our own values? And I read recently, and talked in the sessions recently, was somebody suggested a technique called deep fast forwarding, which means you imagine this is your funeral. You see your tombstone, this is your funeral, and then think what people are talking about you, or what you want people to talk about you in that funeral, near a tombstone. And I did this in a number of audiences. I did this in the recent class session which I had. Everyone mentioned, I want to be seen kind, I want to be seen helpful, I want to be seen good, I want to be seen to be following the right thing. Typical human values, good values which we have been taught and brought up with. And that was a fundamental way to connect, to find out what my values are, because I want to be seen like this going forward. And perhaps that could be one way to solve those ethical dilemmas at a personal level first, and then, as you rightly described, the organizational level. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, absolutely. I think the personal value is something which, nobody can judge your personal values. And who is the best judge to know whether you are upholding your personal values is you. As I always tell people, when a signal, you believe that I follow the conduct in a society. When you're driving the car and you find red light and there is no traffic, and there is no traffic and there is no police, and what do you do in the situation? Will you break the red signal and go over because there is nobody to watch? Or you will follow what you have agreed to follow? So now these questions that you only can ask, and you are to be proud of the fact that I'm upholding the values, correct? So the same thing happens to companies. You can say any amount of values you can write and put it up on your
Website or board.
Website and board. What I'm of the opinion is, how do you uphold your lighthouse? Do you switch off the lighthouse at your convenience, or you keep the lighthouse throughout the night when people are searching for a direction? And that's the time these lighthouses should say, it happens to families, right? There are some traditional values of the family. There are people who uphold. And there are people who say, I don't have a value for this. Correct? Because I have something else. So the question here is that, of course, in our Hindu setup, we call it dharma, right? So the question is, you can always throw it out and say it is not relevant to me today. The other way is to say, I would like to uphold, I would like to keep this as a basis of my living. This is how I'm going to do, right? If somebody wants to say, I want to live like a Harishchandra, but there are consequences attached to being Harishchandra, right? But there are people who say,
this is my choice.
It's a choice that I make, and I want to live. Like, for example, there are a lot of bureaucrats in our country we are all should be proud of, where they have lived to the fullest principle. And same thing about doctors I've come across who take a Hippocrates oath, right? Do no harm to patients, right? That's what the Hippocrates oath you take. And you say kindliness, care and concern is the essence of. Now the question is that if I am a doctor, if that is my value, then I need to uphold those values. Even at the cost of, when you start breaking those values, and that's the time you have to make yourself accountable, and there are consequences attached to it, right? So ethics, I'm of the opinion, we can endlessly talk, but very important thing is that when you face a dilemma, correct? If you can recognize the values that you stand for and use that lens and say, I'm going to stick to these values and that's how I'm going to go either right or left. And it's going to be very company specific, and it's going to be nation specific. Like for example, if you go to Japan, the whole country has a value which you can never you will never see in other parts of the world. High level of punctuality. What if I say I'm going to be at 10 o'clock, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. All the trains run on time, right? People show up on time. So there are something which you have to say, this is my values that I'm not going to compromise. And that is a lens on which I'm going to resolve. So that's how I would recommend to people.
And I think very, very well stated, Vaidheesh. And it's the way you look at it. There are success stories, both sides. There are success stories by following your values, and there are umpteen stories available where people succeeded after connecting to their values and for upholding those values all throughout. And therefore, it's your own personal viewpoint and personal selection and personal judgment what you want to follow. And I think you dealt with typical dilemmas very, very well. You also stated, I remember, Vaidheesh, that you may not have answers to all the questions which you have. That was another important point I recall you mentioned. And therefore, important is for you to think and maybe you find a solution going forward.
And seek.
And seek.
And this dilemma, you can talk to your colleagues, you can talk to your peers, you can speak to your boss, and you can even take advice from your friends and well-wishers. Hey, listen, I'm in this particular situation, and both looks good. But what do you think? And invariably you will find, you will get a nice answers from people. So you are not alone when you are in dilemmas. Always seek help from others. And there is no need for you to jump into decision. Dilemmas, always it's a good idea to pull back and take time, and nobody is compelling you to take right or left. Right?
Do have a good tolerance for ambiguity for some time.
Absolutely.
Don't rush for answers.
Rush for answers.
These are tough questions, tough situations, real situations, and therefore seeking help. Don't jump into conclusions or decisions. I think is very, very vital.
And one thing is finally that at the end of the day, you have to take the decision. Correct? And then when you take the decision, you have to say, it's my decision. It's not all the people whom I asked answers. It is their decision. It is not their decision, it's your decision. And you should have the courage and conviction to stand by the decision and say, I evaluated and I came to conclusion, I used my right lens and this is it. And you should stand tall and say, I am willing to face up to my mother or my grandmother when she sees a news in the newspaper about you, you should be able to not have a red face.
Very true, very true. You've said it earlier, you said it now, you have seen you in a number of forums talking about it. Today industry is talking about it. And therefore, I bring you closer to GSK now, your alma mater, and my alma mater, frankly. We hear that GSK pioneered by removing the sales targets from the field. We also hear that GSK tweaked doing the incentive plan and is doing that in a very, very different way, not linking to the field targets again. I think these were all good to hear things. We all felt, yeah, this is not right, but it never happened. You actually did, and therefore, I'm personally keen that you share with the audiences how did you go about doing it, how did you convince other stakeholders, your employees and other stakeholders like customers, etc. It's not just these incentives and the targets, I believe, even how you deal with the customer also you have revisited that. So it will be great to hear from you. How did you go about doing it, and those insights will be useful for many listeners today.
Yeah, so look, you will first and foremost, I think, again, as I said, that what GSK did may sound unique, but again, it's no brainer, not from any other point of view. See, as I told you about dilemma and decision making, right? The same thing that you use here, the lens that you use, and first and foremost, you need to recognize the fact. Particularly in pharma industry, I'm not going wherever the fundamental job of our frontline people, when I'm talking of frontline, people who represent the company. Every company has a different name for those people. We call it as MBAs. MBAs.
What is the full form?
They are business associate.
Okay, good.
That basically what is their role, right? Their role is to educate our clinicians. If you are in the business of educating the doctors, I go back to my Hippocrates principle. If you look at Hippocrates as a clinician, his whole idea is focusing on the patient, right? And for him, it's all about care, concern, and humility. Now, assume most of the clinicians that we have, their fundamental focus is on the patient. What is the job of pharmaceutical industry or a medical device industry? Our job is to facilitate the clinicians or the system out there to make sure this relationship between the patient and the doctors gets a maximum amount of impact to the patient. At the end of the day, the patient has to recover fast. And the reason why the person has come to the doctor is to solve his problem of sickness or wanting to get better. It's a human challenge. Our job is to strengthen the hand of the physicians. How do you do that? If I strengthen my company representative to deliver messages or a communication of the drugs or devices that they have, how that's going to help him, and then give him the choice. Our idea is to make sure that he gets a choice of what decision to take related to a particular condition which he is faced with. Our job is not to tell the doctor as to what he should prescribe or what he should not prescribe. our job is to tell the doctor, under so and so condition, if you experience so and so and so, we recommend based on certain clinical support that this particular drug may be of choice to you. Now, as long as you give the choice to a doctor, and if the rep does a good job of that, then you stand a chance of the doctor using your drug or a solution as and when the condition is presented to him while he is diagnosing the patient. Now, this is the scenario that we are in. Now, when you make your representative to start adding another dimension, which he says, I want you to do more of that by giving more prescription, the chances are that representative is likely to do a self-serving behavior, which is not is not in the interest of either a doctor or the patient. So that is one of the fundamental reasons we realized it's a very good idea to leave only one job to our representative, which is do a good job of offering the choice to the doctors, so that the doctors have a choice to do as and when a condition comes. He sees our brand or a product as a good choice of medicine for a particular condition. Now, that is his choice, and condition has to occur as and when that occurs. That means he becomes a brand of choice.
Yeah.
Correct? Now, we are also in the business. I also want to make sure we are also in the business that if the money doesn't come, I don't have money to pay for my innovation, drug discovery, or paying for the salaries of people. That you treat it as a separate business activity. So you manage it through other commercial operations, wherein you task that responsibility to your managers. So you basically dealing the sales part of it, what comes out of the prescription. There are some commercial activity that has to happen. That means the chemist has to stock the product, make sure the chemist is stocking the product, making sure the distributors are well stocked up to make sure as and when the prescription comes, the prescription gets honored. But if you are going to give both the jobs to the rep, the chances are what we call the lead indicators and lag indicators. The lead indicators are the one with basically how well you communicated the choice to the doctor. The lag indicator is an outcome of that work that you have done, is the prescription flow or the somebody wanting that particular drug to be given. So that is the fundamental principle of the decision that we took. So those people who are in the front, we wanted them to have this particular focus and make sure what they are supposed to do, they do a good job of that and evaluate them. The commercial piece that we give the responsibility to our managers to make sure this commercial part of buying, selling to a distributor, retailer and all those things are done. But the fundamental aspect of the prescription flowing through, because of the choice that the doctor has made, of the condition that he has seen, which is good for the patient. So what it means is that you have a natural flow of the right behavior is being exhibited in the marketplace.
Wonderful. I think with the abundant clarity you mentioned, segregating the roles.
Correct.
The role of informing the doctor about the product which is going to prescribe in the best possible manner to be done by the rep, and after the prescription is generated, thereafter what follows is making product available, making sure that the other stakeholders are happy about it, or whatever factors go into their happiness, and which you are given to the managers. I think is the best way, to do about it. Having implemented it for so long, how do you see now playing out?
As like any change that happens in any organization, these are all change in mindset. It's not easy, right? It's not it's all age old. Even now, every company does that. For you to change the mindset, it does take time. But luck would have it, or I would say, harder you work, luckier you become. So we are one of the largest volume player in the country today. We are the number one volume player, despite, and we are still growing at faster than the market.
I want to hear that from you.
Yeah, you can see from all the retail audit and all those stuff. And of course, we did have a challenge on supplies and adjustments of the processes. And of course, so when all these supply issues and process adjustments and all have taken place, I think we are seeing a very stable management process is happening. But you'll always have the conflict where people saying why there is no pressure in the system and all those stuff. I think we need to keep this clarity in mind. We cannot afford to dilute our ability to provide choice to the doctors, and we have to do it well. You can't be casual about it. So you got to do it at the highest level. So we have put some process in place to evaluate our reps are doing a good job or not. We have something called as a sales readiness index, where on which our reps are measured, and I'm very happy to see our people are embracing it well. They know very well that it's in the interest of the patients, and I'm quite sure that everybody has gone through a big change process. But I think it's for the good for the industry. When some of the behaviors you don't want that to happen no longer exist. But there will be always pressure on commercial operations versus fundamental work. Our job is to keep maintaining the balance so that the balance don't go out of hand.
I think the thought is very scientific. If you focus on output and you don't focus on the roots which give you the output,
right,
you will lose out. And that's what perhaps have been happening. Everybody is focusing on output. Every single person in the organization is only focusing on output. Therefore, the processes which lead to the output have been compromised. And I think you have brought focus on those which is what you call lead indicators. Those processes, activities, knowledge, etc. and getting accepted. Maybe I think it might be a bit relieving to the field force as well, because otherwise they were simply trapped in the output parameters. Let me also share with you, Vaidheesh, being connected to GSK for a long time, I have a number of people known to me, and general feedback which I had the opportunity to interface with people has been pretty positive. So I think the organization, you have done a commendable job in making this paradigm shift, communicating the rationale behind it, and making people accept it also good. And as we discussed, if the focus is on processes, focus is on those pathways which lead to the output, I think the output automatically will happen, and GSK case has clearly proved that to all of us. Now, I know you highlighted some difficulties which you face. Any unsurmountable difficulties you face in this journey, or which made you think now maybe something else would have, or maybe somewhere you had thought within you that no, it's a difficult task we've taken? Because at the end of the day, you being the managing director are also accountable for the financials of the organization.
I don't think it's unmountable. See, you know very well, these are all change management. See, any change management, you need to put a timetable to it. There are some changes are easy, some changes take more time. But change is definite, provided you are committed. So, the question is, if it takes 10 days to climb Mount Everest, it will take 10 days. If it takes 1 year, it has to take 1 year. But you need to climb. So, it is, as I told you, fundamentally at the end of the day, if a patient is at your center, and I don't want, if I am a patient, I don't want my doctor to prescribe something because he has compromised on something else. Not based on the medically based choice. Instead, the choice was based on something else, and as a patient, I've been short-circuited. correct?
Yeah.
And that is exactly what I want my people to do. Make sure that GSK products, when it's prescribed, it is not out of short circuit, but out of a clinical vision.
Wow, wonderful to hear that from the person who actually implemented it. Quickly coming to you have recently worn the hat of OPPI president, and therefore, and I think OPPI, as I mentioned earlier, is lucky to have a strategic leader, thinker like you at the helm. And also you have good enough experience in handling the government affairs earlier. What are your thoughts on industry's priorities today? How do we address the whole ecosystem today? I heard some of your thoughts in your OPPI address. Now, yes, quite some time you have had that mantle on you. Could you share with us what are your broad thoughts on where do you want, as an OPPI president, the industry to move? And in terms of priorities, in terms of roadmap, and in terms of initial successes or not so great successes so far?
No, I think first and foremost, I think in OPPI to take leadership role, frankly, it's a privilege. It's an honor. Not from any other point of view. I think there are doyens of the industry who have brought this industry to a level where it is. I think they've done a commendable job as an industry over 50 years or 60 years. This industry has played a very vital role for the health of the country as well as in fact, I would say we are now the major exporter to the rest of the world on generic, branded generic. So as far as OPPI is concerned, I think, as you know, the OPPI comprises of companies which are basically innovator companies. Innovator companies, in a sense, in a very, not in a narrow view, people might see innovative company only talk about IP. That's where I look at the biggest priority for OPPI is to play a big role with government in setting an agenda broader than pharma industry. Because pharma industry is only one piece of healthcare industry or the healthcare ecosystem of this country. Unlike many other countries where there is a healthcare system, which is very well defined healthcare system, national healthcare system, where you have a clear-cut established patient care pathway. There is a clear-cut established protocols of how a disease to be managed on a national basis, how data is collected, and what drugs to be administered or to be given to what diseases. Everything very well defined on a national basis, and many of them are driven by government. And in India, I think India has got a very unique model. Over a period of time, we evolved our own unique model. Not necessarily deliberate, but some deliberate, some has happened by way of evolution, what I call the amoeba way of evolving, which is for a good reason, where we have now longevity of the population has gone up from 45 years to now 67 average age, so which is fantastic. A lot of people are living longer. And there is something that we as a government, we are doing very well. As an industry, we are doing very well.
Mortality rate has gone down.
Mortality rate. And there are some indicators still working that are improving in a large country like this.
A lot of indicators.
But however, the challenge in India is the fact, the way in which our healthcare system revolves around. There is a earlier days, the primary focus is on communicable disease. And our country's systems are designed to deal with communicable disease or diseases which need to be handled one-off. Like for example, polio. We've done a fantastic job, polio eradication. or a smallpox eradication, or managing elephantiasis, for example. We are on the verge of eliminating lymphatic filariasis from our country. And similarly, there are a lot of this malaria management. Of course, TB is still a challenge that's happening. I'll tell you why it's a challenge. But wherever it's required, one-off, our system, primary care, secondary care, all these are defined. Hospital, district headquarter hospitals, they're overloaded, but they're doing a great job. And nursing homes, hospital, private. Now, the challenge comes when this whole profile, healthcare profile of the country is changing with economic prosperity, which is a non-communicable disease, which is on the rise. Now, when I say non-communicable, many of them are chronic in nature. Now, chronic diseases requires management. It's not a one-off management. Where somebody goes and the dawai dijiye, you give a dawai, take the dawai for 5 days, they're all right. That is the current system of management.
Which is acute.
Which is acute. Our system is geared for acute. Whereas our system is not given for chronic, whether it's a diabetes or whether it is a renal failures, hypertensions, wherever it requires. Even TB, where the person has to be given tablets or medicine for 10 months for it to become non-resistant. Now, this is a challenge where you require a lot of budgets and you require a different mechanism of delivery. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, our private healthcare responded to it. With all this private hospital, way back in 1983-84, Apollo Hospital came in, and after that there's a lot of privatization. So the private hospitals have done a good job of delivering care, and private pharmaceutical industry, they responded to it. And I think now what has happened is in rest of the world, how this is managed is through a reimbursement mechanisms and delivery mechanisms, which are well defined. Patient protocol is all well defined. Now what has happened, somewhere down the line we missed the beat on that because of the priorities of rural, national, health mission and all those stuff. Now suddenly we realize that pharmaceutical product pricing is high. So the best way to react to it is through price controls, right? And putting a cap on margins and other stuff. The better way of doing it is identify a good financing mechanism. Now, one of the best way to manage this is through a robust financing mechanism, what I call it the demand side financing. Manage it through health insurance. Put money in the hands of patients. When you put money in the hands of patients, what tends to happen is that they are likely to seek quality. They will not look for compromised healthcare. If I have only 5,000 rupees, then I will look for a healthcare which can give it to me at 5,000 rupees. So you likely to have various people in this country getting a healthcare delivery at different quality standards. Whereas if you have a proper healthcare insurance, health insurance is, in my opinion, is the best solution combined with supply side financing of government, where you created a capacity of delivery. What tends to happen in the financing of healthcare insurance is on risk pooling. Of 1 billion people, not everybody gets sick at one day. In a year, about 5 to 6% of the people will get sick. So you are talking about taking care of 50 to 60 million people only in a year's time. So 50 to 60 million people, even if you have $1 per person in the country, you got a $1 billion. A $1 billion available to you, even if the insurance company take $50 million, $100 million for their survival of margins, you have a $900 million available to take care of $50 to $60 million.
And not that we didn't know, the business of insurance, life insurance or otherwise, is available to us for ages. And you would agree with me, for past many years, since the time I've been in the industry, we have been saying that insurance is something which is underdeveloped in our country and we have not really moved up. But somehow it did not get the attention. And the biggest player in this, the government, did not play a great role or facilitating role. So do you think government has a role to play in?
I'm not sure government did not play. I'm not, see, these are all about, the mechanism has to form, and it's like a telecom industry, right? It's not that government did not know how to give communication facility. It's also the players have to form, and you need to form an ecosystem for it to emerge. I somehow feel today, I think it's emerging very nicely. I can clearly see the government is spending adequate time with the insurance company, with IRDA taking an active role. I see that is emerging very well. Now, the reason why I'm giving this big backgrounder to my OPPI agenda, the innovation, most of the companies in OPPI are innovation companies. Now, innovation, there is a price you have to pay. Now, when somebody innovates a drug, now they need to get returns out of the innovation because they have taken money out of the shareholders and putting it in discovery. And that money has to be paid. Now, what should not happen, if a common man has to pay out of his pocket, they would not be able to afford the innovation. That's why it's so important, the risk pooling or syndicating the risk is the best way to get the best innovative products made available in this country the day when it's innovated. So our aim should be, how do I bring the latest cancer innovative product to this country and make it available to a common man on the road? That can happen only when I have a good robust financing mechanism in place. Rather than talking about, can we reduce the price, can we give us a lower price to India, patients cannot afford. I don't think the issue is not about patient affordability. It's about financing mechanism not existing.
So I think very well said, and I think this opinion of yours you've been expressing, you express at OPPAN, you have expressed in many other forums as well. Key is in execution now. So how do you see that this thought of making the money available so that the healthcare is not compromised, and how you think that going to pan out now?
No, I think there is a good groundswell from the insurance industry, and the government is also talking about universal health insurance. They are talking about providing a universal health care. Now, this is not going to overnight, these things are not going to happen. It has to be understood, and experts have to meet, and technology assessment bodies have to be set up to say why somebody need to pay X amount of money for a particular drug or a device. How is it different from the current standard of care? See, for example, by not taking a proton pump inhibitor, people are dying of stomach ulcers. Now, after proton pump inhibitors came, ranitidine, today nobody dies of stomach ulcers. In a sense, not nobody in a sense. I have not come across people saying stomach ulcer bleeding because of that somebody died. Because see the age, number of years you got out of the drug, from people dying at the age of 45, now people living till 80. Now, what is the price that you will pay for a drug like this? So we need that kind of approach to bringing innovative drugs to this country and see what impact it has on the national economy, what impacts on longevity. That's how we need to be, and innovators will be willing to come and give their innovation to the country when they find that there are people wanting to pay for those innovations.
So there will be a full flow of the innovation, the way it is available to the rest of the world, to India as well.
And we are very keen as a OPPI. We need to bring innovative drugs to this country and finding a financing mechanism. At the same time, quite obviously, it should be affordable to even the healthcare financing agencies. Mm-hmm. It cannot be. So that is going to be our approach, rather than saying, how do I reduce the prices, and then people taking their own sweet time, priorities of company, which country, and India should be the country where people should be excited to launch innovative. That should be my dream.
Same. I agree with you. And so I'm very happy to hear from you that things are falling in place. Insurance industry is developing and supporting, the Prime Minister also perhaps appears to be keen on these areas. We had earlier Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana. There was a plan to have some 60 odd crore people to be under this scheme, and now they've launched something for the poor people now, and great to know that the whole there is a thought process to bring in the money in the hands of people through various mechanisms supported by the government or private insurance companies, whatever. So that's about your thought process about of OPPI and the industry at large. Now I come to you. You have a fantastic leadership journey looking back. I'm sure many of the listeners would be really envying or vying and keen to know, if you look back and see what would be your thoughts or insights which made you successful what you are today. And I don't want to use the word secrets of success, but some suggestions, some thoughts to people who are listening to follow, because I know there are a lot of people who want to be the leader like you.
Well, thanks very much for all these glorious terms that you use, but I don't think I deserve all the stuff that you mentioned. But
as long as you are able to give the thoughts to people here.
So, but I can give a couple of thoughts. It's not that all of you, everyone is a leader in his own right. It is a situation where you come across. How do you deal with the situation? How do you succeed in your endeavor? First and foremost, I think fundamentally, you need to believe in yourself. When I said you need to believe in yourself, first and foremost, you need to believe that you are not a victim of situation. Okay? And you are the cause of the thought, and you are the cause of that execution. And what happens, it's because of you. So the day when we stop externalizing an outcome and not taking accountability for the outcome, I personally believe that you cannot be a successful leader. You have to own good and bad on the accountability of what happened. And in an organization, I follow a very simple model, which is not my model, but I embrace it with full strength. Is the 4E model of Michael Yates. You can go to the website of leadervalues.com. He used to be my boss in J&J back in 2006 and 7. Way back in 90s. It's a very interesting theory, which is what is Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela has followed, or Genghis Khan. You can look at every leaders. There are 4 things. First, I think it is not enough you as a leader having a vision, but you need to envision your people. So what it means is that people who are with you as a team, they have to see exactly what you are seeing.
Part of the same vision.
They have to see the same vision as what you are saying, what I call the envisioning. That means you as a leader should make sure, give chance for them to see, help them to see what you are saying. If they are inspired by if you are inspired by Mount Everest, and if you want your team to get inspired, I think first job is to make sure they are as inspired or as motivated about this vision of going to Mount Everest. Second is, I think we underestimate the power of empowering. You need to empower your organization to go pursue this vision. It is the most generally leaders tend to do micromanagement, and they don't empower. You got to trust, and allow people to do what they are supposed to do in accomplishing the vision of a shared vision. And third, job of our leader is also to enable the people to go after the vision. That means if they require a shoe to climb mount, then you need to figure out how to get the shoe. You can't be asking them to climb with a barefoot, right? Or or people get excited about going to Mount Everest, but they don't have the necessary training kit. They don't have the necessary toolkits, right? They are going to be failures. They are highly empowered, envisioned, but they are not enabled. So you need to enable, unlock the chains, and you need to give them necessary change management tools and what it takes to succeed as an enabling mechanism. The last but not the least is energizing. You as a leader have to find a way to energize people after having envisioned, empowered and enabled. You got to do the rah-rah rally, right? To keep the charge going, keep the team going. Now the biggest problem is many times leaders get confused between energizing and envisioning. Just by shouting, saying that "Abhi honge kamyab" song does not make people to know where they are going. So it's very important that people don't confuse. Energizing is a tool that has to be used after having fulfilled the first three. There's no point in energizing a soldier when he does not have a food to eat and he does not have a boot to wear. But energizing him, asking him to climb Kargil, and you are talking about a sure death or a sure defeat. Correct?
That's the hierarchy. The first thing is ambition. You make sure that everybody is seeing the same object, same goal, what you want.
Highly excited about the
vision.
Excited about the vision.
Yeah. I call it the word hallucinated.
Hallucinated.
Exercise. You know, I get that.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
I feel great.
And after either of that is missing, you are likely to be likely to have a bad leadership. You can't have either or. It's a continuous process of constantly checking. Energizing is just not about josh and rabble-rousing talk. It's also about the fact giving the right kind of energetic sub-messages, tools, environment, exciting camaraderie. So it's what I call it is a continuously, and many times what happens is, as the example of Genghis Khan they gave, how Genghis Khan was a terrific leader because he envisioned the nomadic tribes. He made them believe they are the best tribe in the world. He envisioned them as the ruler of their entire region. And the best way he enabled them by giving generals the team and horses, whatever is required. And he energized them by saying, whatever territory we conquer, 1/4 is yours. Right? Now, they gave this as an example of how he envisioned, how he empowered his generals to conquer. And same thing with Gandhiji. He envisioned the Britishers leaving the country, and he made everyone to understand by traveling across the country. He traveled in the train, and he gave this chakra, self-sufficiency. He came up with a lot of models of self-sufficiency, and he busted the whole British idea of making in India by saying, I'm going to make my own salt, I'm going to make my own khadi, right? And he made people believe in it, and he empowered them as a role model, and he energized them by doing this group singing, where the Sabarmati ashram, where he created an ashram, where he created lots of energizing.
That was his way of energizing.
His way of energizing. So this is a fantastic model for people to follow. So I embrace this as a tool in my leadership.
Wonderful. I think well said, Vaidheesh. And I think if, not that we all don't know about that, but if we understand how do we follow, how do we make sure that we have the hierarchy of these 4 E's starting from envisioning, empowering, enabling, and energizing. And we have seen, when I asked him the question of what made him successful, and the top of the mind leadership insight came like this, I think is something very, very practical and doable. Generally, when you have a discussion of leadership, there is a discussion role model also creeps in. Did you have any role model?
As far as I'm concerned, for me, a role model is, I had only one big role model is Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda. Not for his philosophical teaching, I think for his attitude towards what can be done. He lived in possibilities. And he never believed in failures. And if you listen to his talk in Chicago, or his book on Colombo to Almora, he is one of the real role model of most inspiring leader. One, I would say, for any youngsters to follow his Swami Vivekananda. And I had a chance to study in the institute, so to that extent I got to know more about his. So I would say that, and apart from that, I great regard for Mahatma Gandhi for his what he did, throwing up all the good things in life in South Africa, being a lawyer and a barrister, and coming and wanting to spend the rest of his life doing something phenomenal. The same thing, I have a great regard for Nelson Mandela. For having been in prison for so many years, holding on to his vision of a free Africa, and he comes out of the prison and then he becomes the president. Those are all the unbelievable leadership trait of sustaining your vision. In my opinion, those are the big role model. How do you maintain your energy on your vision, destination where you want to go, and not let go with all the challenges that come in?
Wow, having heard your role models, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Vivekananda, no wonder you are a strong votary of ethics, and you are passionate about ethics, and I think this has, to my mind, played a significant role in your story of ethics as we see in the industry today. So I know we come to almost an end, but before I let you go, few messages, if you feel like. I know there are number of colleagues from the industry watching. Few of the simple messages which you think you need to communicate using this medium to these people in the industry.
I'm very glad that you giving an opportunity like this for engaging with my industry colleagues, and you just told me that people are going to watch. And a simple message. I've been in the healthcare industry for now over 30 years. One thing that always moves my heart is the fact that this is an industry where we get paid for doing good things in life. You get paid salary, you get bonuses, you get to see the different world, and at the same time you're sitting there.
Travel across
at the same time you're doing
places, meeting elite of the society called doctors,
and then getting to make the sick people to get all right. So for me, I think we are all blessed people, those who are in this industry, and we should not let this opportunity pass by. Whatever it takes, please do your bit in making a difference. And in the name of economic prosperity, I think we should not lose sight of what is our purpose. And I know there are some commercial model involved in what we do. Frankly, I believe it's an outcome. Fundamental is, I think, as long as we have a heart towards the patient whom we are serving, I sincerely believe that I have seen patients whether suffering and they get resolved by your own medicines. I think that's a great satisfaction that we should get, and continue to keep that spirit alive, and we should be counted as an important citizen of the world, rather than we are all seen as people who are making money out of sickness. I think that's one of my goal also in the OPPL president, is to change the image of this industry, because we do a lot of good things and people need to know that we make a difference. If we are not going to promote the medicines, people are not going to get well. You know, they don't have a good choice of medicine. So we're all brothers of this industry, and we should continue to do the good work that we are doing.
That has been indeed a very profound point which you made, Vaidheesh. As you were speaking, I myself had lots of points of such realization in my own personal career as being associate pharmaceutical industry, where I remember having seen a father of a young boy standing in front of my house and saying that this particular medicine is not available, and this medicine is not available. My son is going to have severe pain. He was suffering actually from neuropathic pain, neuralgias, and the medicine was gabapentin, and gabapentin was giving him relief, and that was going out of stock because only one company was marketing, and that's the point when I made him few strips available and made the drug available from the company. I saw the real satisfaction, happiness, joy on the face of those people. And I'm sure I'm not alone, or Vaidheesh is not alone. I think all of us in the industry have gone through those points a number of times. And that's what should make us feel proud to be part of that industry. Apart from the fact that, as you rightly mentioned, it is a source of our livelihood, it's a source of our esteem, prestige, etc., etc. I would keep talking. If you have a person like Vaidheesh next to you, you tend to listen more and more of his experience and his thought processes. But somewhere we need to stop. I think we have taken good enough time of yours, Vaidheesh. I want to thank you very, very profusely for having spared the time. I know the second time you're coming to this institute, and spoken to the audiences, wider audiences, gave your mind out. And I'm sure people out in the audience would have definitely benefited out of his life and experiences, which he has shared with us so openly. And I must thank you for a very, very patient hearing. I'm sure today's talk would have really inspired you and would have led you to have some own thoughts of yours moving forward. If that has happened, I think we are achieving the objective this series is designed to achieve. So thank you all, and thanks Vaidheesh for coming over and spending your time. Thanks once again.
Thank you.